let's go back now and pivot and talk about something that happened nearly, 7 weeks ago? The attempted assassination of former president and current presidential candidate Donald J. Trump. And now we have some new information that we probably could have, should have, would have had maybe 2 weeks into the investigation, but they're making it hard to believe that Crooks really acted alone when there's so many egregious holes that had to be created for Crooks to be nearly successful in the first place. So we're going to look at things like, how did he smuggle the armament onto the roof? And there are going to be claims made. I want to see someone take the rifle and put it in the backpack. Tonight, we have to look at the pictures because this is how the FBI does things and leaks it out. Again, the bolt carrier group assembly and the ejection handle has to be precisely put into it. And again, if you're about to get shot by Secret Service and you're trying to do this thing, if you're not practiced, the adrenaline alone would prevent Crooks from assembling that rifle from his backpack on that roof under such scrutiny and pressure. But again, I'm just like internalizing the official story. I'm not trying to be overly conspiratorial and they did it, but there are unanswered questions to a large extent than in other cases wouldn't be there if there weren't more than face value going on. So in this media block, we are going to look at the Trump gunman's gun from a couple different angles. Then we'll ask the question, does it fit in the backpack? And then we have a SWAT sniper who testified. Not everything he says is things we haven't covered, but there are a few new pieces that we haven't covered that I think are important. So we'll go ahead and include most, if not all, of his testimony because it's only like 20 minutes. And there was also an interview where I heard Trump reference a bullet going past his head at 4,000 miles an hour. And I just wanted to put out there that bullets don't travel at 4,000 miles an hour, at least not that caliber of bullet, rather, right? But when you convert 3,000 average feet per second of that projectile, it comes out to about 2,000 miles an hour, which is still pretty fast. Still pretty fast. So it's not like you're going to see it coming and be able to turn your head like Trump did. So act of God, act of, I don't know. What do you call that when that happens? We'll have to see how many more times it happens between now and the election. And to learn more about the last attempted assassination, let's go to. We have Gray Hughes, we have Jeff Stroff, and we have a clip from Blaze TV in this block. All right, let's get to it. And let's learn about the gun that got shot by the other gun of the guy who's not yet identified, I think. Ninth shot guy. Let's check it out.
FBI now says that a man who shot former President Trump saw the campaign rally in Pennsylvania as a, quote, target of opportunity. The FBI just released photos of the rifle Thomas Crooks used the day Mr. Trump was wounded. It has a collapsible stock, which may have been used to conceal it. Investigators have conducted nearly 1,000 interviews, but still haven't been able to pin down a motive. They know Crooks had been doing online searches for both Trump and Biden campaign events. And when Mr. Trump announced his rally in Western Pennsylvania, the FBI says Crooks became hyper-focused on that event. Crooks got off 8 shots from a rooftop nearby before a Secret Service sniper killed him. The FBI now says that a man who shot former President Trump saw
shooting investigation. Continuing on in the Trump shooting investigation, we're going to examine whether the shooter's rifle will fit in the backpack, because many people doubt it. We'll also cover how the Trump shooter may have gotten on the property undetected with that gun. And if the Trump shooter really was a half a mile away walking by all of the vendors at 4:26 p.m., then who was it that the Butler officer had spotted there and texted to everybody at 4:26 p.m.? We're going to take a look at this as well. Now, you know that a number of our conspiracy theory friends, they're already going to be saying, hey, you know what? I don't think they got that rifle in that bag. There's a lot of people, they just can't come to terms with the fact that this shooter was able to get up on that roof with that rifle without being seen. But you know what? I have the answer to that. Check it out. So if you come right here in the photo that the FBI gave us with the backpack and the gun in the same photo, I'm going to go ahead and grab this little piece here and bring it over here and see. So now it looks like it might stick out a few inches out of the top. However, remember, this backpack is deep, so I'm going to bring it right here to the corner, and I'm going to rotate it like this. And that buys us a lot more space here. But remember now, we're not just talking 2 dimensions. This thing can start at this corner at the high and go deep into the other end, the bottom of the backpack in this corner. And I think it'll just barely fit. Now, you guys can let me know, can this muzzle here, can this be unscrewed or anything like that? Or did he just really have it in there tightly jammed? So that's sort of the question. I would like to see video of this being put inside that bag here, because it does look pretty tight, but I think it is doable. And keep in mind also that the dimensions of this backpack are not set in stone. They're not like rock solid, hard material. This is fabric, which can bend and poke out a little bit here and there. So maybe it could fit. What do you think? Let us know down in the comments if you think that they could get this rifle into that backpack. So you see, I have no problem with the idea that the rifle will easily fit into that backpack. Now, the other question that people are asking me about this is, and I think these are probably more distractors than really people wondering about, what was going on. But I get this question a lot. How did he get past the magnetometers with the rifle? So that's why they don't believe he could have gotten up there with it. Well, because that area was not part of the secure area. So take a look at this. So when you look at the rally site, the only area that was Secret Service protected was this whole rally site area here. So there was a fenced-in area, and this is where the crowd was. And all of these people had to go through security checkpoints and everything, and magnetometers and all of that. But over here, there was no security. In fact, there wasn't supposed to be anybody over here, even though we had a few small crowds of people gathered around these trees, as we saw from all of those witness videos. But this area was not part of the Secret Service protection zone, and so anybody over here did not pass through any type of security. So that's how you get over there with the gun. And if we still don't know where his car was parked. I wish they would divulge more information about that. Where did they find his car? But we saw on the dash cam that he came across the street over here to get onto the property at some point during the day. Now, he had been on and off the property, but somewhere around here in this area is likely where he got onto this property, because he could not get on over here. There's a chain link fence that goes all the way around, and here's another chain link fence over here. Now, we also need to talk about the FBI minutes from their call the other day that I didn't get to in last night's video, but this is pretty important about the timeline. I don't know why the police officer, when he sent this text message, why he didn't send a picture of the subject as well, because he's saying, look, this guy drove in here and parked and right alongside us and all that. Review shows the subject was in fact near the farm show airstrip, walking past a row of vendors outside the secure perimeter about a half mile away from the grounds at 4:26 p.m. So that kind of... So if you go back and look at the police dash cam video of right after the shooting, so you can see that motorcycle that's parked there. And this became the subject of some scrutiny a little bit later on here when some of the other officers come by with a canine dog, and you're going to see them. See here, he's checking out the bike. And so this bike belongs to a guy that was over on the grassy area alongside Dave Stewart, who, as you recall, took that now famous but shaky video, and he was the owner of this bike. And when he was talking to the police afterwards, they supposedly weren't allowing him to take it right away. So I don't know when they gave it back to him, but here you can see they're opening it up, they're inspecting it. And so that's why I believe this might be the person that was referenced in that text message by the police officer. Although, again, I don't know why the officer didn't take a picture of him and why it was just kind of left open. And, it should have been like what the first officer did, what Officer Greg Nickel did. He took a picture of the shooter down below and then sent it out in that group text. But we don't know why this officer did not. And then they also provided this photo yesterday, but this was not taken by the FBI. This was taken by the local police. And so that's why it's a little bit more rudimentary in nature and not very high resolution. And I wish they had shown like the entire car, front, side, back, and everything, so we could see everything about it. But apparently it has a trunk, so I think we can rule out that white van as a red herring. Then the FBI also released this here. This is from the media call. So these were these prepared remarks from the Pittsburgh special agent in charge there. And here's what he had to say. So they've worked towards two goals here. One is to identify the subject's motives for the attempted assassination and determine whether he worked with any co-conspirators or conducted this act alone. Now, they do say here that to date, we have not uncovered any credible evidence indicating the subject conspired with anyone else. Now, I know a lot of people are poo-pooing that, but hey, I guess if you can provide some evidence, that'll change their mind. They haven't ruled it out completely, but they're just saying to date, we have not uncovered any. And I've been getting a lot of questions about this here. This, of course, is all, bogus nonsense, but people are still asking because they hear it or they see it posted. But these guys are asking about, the 1.5 million in foreign accounts that this guy supposedly had. That's all been debunked. It's false. A lot of it stemmed probably from Instagram posts like this one here, where you go for that bastion of truth, folks. But you can see they had already flagged it as false information there. So right here, they're kind of distancing themselves from apparently saying anything bad about the Secret Service, because it says it's not the FBI's role to investigate the actions, the security posture, or the responsibilities of the Secret Service or local law enforcement related to the rally. Then he says, we also remain in contact with the subject's family members who have been extremely cooperative with our investigation. But yet they lawyered up the other day with a big fancy law firm. So I wonder if they are possibly seeing some kind of litigation coming down the pike for them. So they looked at his online searches and stuff. And look at this, in late September 2023, and an account connected to him was used to search the former president's campaign schedule and upcoming Pennsylvania appearances. And then from April until July, he searched campaign events for both former President Trump and Joe Biden, events scheduled to take place in Western Pennsylvania. So my guess is he didn't have a preference who, he just wanted to kill somebody. This just sounds to me like somebody that's really whacked out and all he wants to do is kill people. He wasn't like against Trump for any particular reason, and probably not against Biden for any particular reason. Sounds more like he's trying to make a name for himself. So this is interesting. On July 6th, the same day that he registered for the rally, these are the things he searched for. How far was Oswald from Kennedy? Where will Trump speak from at Butler Farm Show? Butler Farm Show podium and Butler Farm Show photos. On July 8th, he searched for AGR International. How about that, huh? And then on July 9th, he searched ballistic calculator. And then on July 10th, he searched weather in Butler. See, but look at this. In the month leading up to the shooting, he conducted more than 60 searches related to President Biden and former President Trump. And then on July 5th, he searched for when is the DNC convention. And then this is interesting here, regarding the improvised explosives found in the shooter's vehicle, as well as devices found in his bedroom. The subject conducted multiple searches pertaining to explosive devices as early as September 2019, continuing through this summer. So this guy's been pretty whacked out for a number of years, it seems. Here's the searches he did: detonating cord, blasting cap, how to make a bomb from fertilizer. That's from the Oklahoma City bombing, if you remember back in, I think it was 94 or 95. How do remote detonators work? The subject also searched for ammonium nitrate, that's that fertilizer stuff, and other materials consistent with the manufacturing of explosive devices. So it says here that the FBI's lab determined that the components used by the subject were legal to purchase and readily available online. And then continuing on the rifle analysis, so this should answer some of the questions that we were talking about in last night's video. It says, additionally, regarding the subject's rifle, the FBI Laboratory Division successfully test-fired the weapon, concluding it was and remains fully operational. They also positively matched all 8 shell casings located on the roof with the subject's rifle. That makes me a little nervous knowing that, because you know what? That means when he sat up and he turned the gun towards the audience there, the other witnesses, that's when the Secret Service sniper came in and shot him. But if they hadn't shot him when he did, that means his gun was operational, even though the SWAT officer had busted up that stock there. So he was probably, who knows how many seconds away from killing more people, because he had the gun aimed right at them. Ooh, that's a scary thought right there. Very unnerving. FBI also wanted to address the incorrect reporting that's been going on. So what they mentioned here first was that on the encrypted email accounts, he had overseas encrypted email accounts. And I think this is where a lot of these bogus claims came out, that there was bank accounts. So people tried to twist like little bits of truth into complete falseness here. So he said, we understand these accounts were encrypted. However, the level of encryption was no more sophisticated than any standard widely used internet-based email service. He said, we successfully accessed the information from these accounts and appropriately analyzed their content. However, we continue to identify and exploit the subject's accounts. So they got in the email accounts. No mention of any bank accounts. And then they addressed the release of the crime scene, which we had talked about on a video the other day. And it says here, second, regarding the release of the crime scene, the FBI did release the crime scene at the Butler Fairgrounds as well as the AGR complex to the property owners in a timely manner. In fact, we released these sites on a rolling basis, but only after completing a thorough processing of each location, exhausting all efforts to collect any items of evidentiary value. Prior to releasing each site, we followed all appropriate evidence-gathering procedures and completed the final release of the scene 7 days after the attack. Cleaning of the biological evidence. Third, regarding the cleaning of the AGR roof, the FBI followed established evidentiary policies and procedures for the return of crime scenes to the property owner. This included cleaning the biological material from the roof only after ensuring we collected all relevant evidence. And then they're addressing the release of the subject's body. After rendering the scene safe and following our established evidence-gathering procedures, the FBI contacted the Butler County Coroner's Office. Subsequently, the coroner removed the body from the scene and conducted a death investigation. The Butler County Coroner's Office then deferred to have the Allegheny County Office of the Medical Examiner conduct the autopsy. Once Allegheny County completed the autopsy, the Butler County Coroner's Office consulted with the FBI asking if there were any additional necessary investigative steps with respect to the body. The FBI and the Pennsylvania State Police then concurred with Butler County Coroner's Office decision to release the remains to the subject's family. He says, I want to stress that it is not standard procedure or practice for the FBI or any law enforcement agency to request that the coroner or medical examiner maintain indefinite custody of a deceased subject's body once the investigative purpose of our agency and our partner agencies are completed. I would also like to mention that the FBI is now in possession of the subject's autopsy and toxicology reports from the coroner's office. The autopsy report indicated the subject was pronounced deceased at 6:25 as a result of gunshot wound to the head. All reviewable evidence collected from the AGR roof and from the subject's body are consistent with the round fired by the Secret Service sniper. Additionally, the toxicology report revealed negative results, quote, for alcohol and drugs of abuse. And then here they addressed about why they released the first responders so quickly. So he said here, we had no reason to hold or detain any first responder as the law enforcement community assembled at Butler was actively responding to public safety risks and assisting with the investigative activity throughout the night. So it says here, our priorities that night, as shared by local law enforcement, were to secure the scene, preserve evidence, and ensure public safety. And then also it says here, they got that second video from a local business showed the subject climbed to the roof of the AGR complex at approximately 6:05 p.m. I wish they would release that video, but I kind of showed you where I thought it might have been from that ice cream shop across the street in last night's video. And then it says here, video from local business, police dash cam, and police body cameras confirm the suspect's movement across multiple AGR building roofs between 6:05 and 6:08 p.m. So far I don't disagree with anything on there. Finally, at 6:11, the subject fired 8 rounds before being neutralized. And the FBI official statement right now is that the overall finding is the subject was only on the roof for approximately 6 minutes prior to the shooting between 6:05 and 6:11 p.m. Now, don't stretch that out and start making, false claims too. He wasn't in position for 6 minutes. He was making his trip along the roof and probably got into position or was noticed crawling up that final part of the roof over the one-story building. He was noticed by witnesses climbing up and over and everything and doing his little bear claw crawling. That happened at 6:09 p.m., only 2 minutes before the shooting. So he probably didn't even really get into position until maybe 90 seconds before the shooting or so, somewhere around there. And one other thing too, make sure you check out these two videos over here, because if you're new to the channel and you haven't seen the rest of these videos, you definitely want to binge watch those, plus all of the other engineering disasters we've covered here on the channel.
Hello, this is Gray Hughes of Gray Hughes Investigates on YouTube. Today's video is regarding some new images that were released, but I was actually already working on another video, but these just came out. They were emailed to me. Thank you for sending those. And I'm going to go over these images first. They were released by the FBI, and they show Thomas Crook's weapon, AR-15, and some other images, also of the improvised explosive devices that he made. The other part of the video is regarding the communication, lack of communication, and the 3 minutes of time when there was actually, somebody said, hey, there's somebody on the roof, until, you know, Thomas Crook's actually shot. So somebody should have done something. And I think I figured out also what the variance is. You know, the video that one of the people that was shot took of, you can see Crooks in the background behind Trump running. I think I figured out exactly when that is in the video, and I link it up to the other video that was shot by the officer walking from underneath the water tower, okay? But let's look at these images right now. So this is the AR-15, and you know, the first thing you can see is that there is a blown out portion of the stock there. I mean, look at that. Huge hole in there. So that's the portion that the sniper, the SWAT sniper, shot out. He was about right here. You saw that on my other videos where an agent walking from this building walks over here, and then he's right around in this area. He's filming in this direction, and you see a SWAT officer shoot, and then he comes around here. There's a lot of people who think that he shot that last shot when his rifle's aimed up there, but he's actually just looking through a scope because he already shot up there, and then he puts his thumb up in the air to signify to the sniper that they got him. All right, it's pretty obvious. So anyways, this guy's right here, and he shoots up and he hits Thomas Crook's gun, and Crooks was right in this position right there, and he was shot by the SWAT person there, and it just hit the stock of the gun. All right, so let's go back to the images. There's that one, and then this really zooms in. I'm not sure if they put this in there just to kind of keep things together. Like, that's what it was supposed to look like inside prior, and then that got blown out. I'm not proficient with guns, but you can definitely see that whole area was blown out. And they either put something back in there to keep it together, or there was something that was up forward and then moved back. Don't know. And then here's a wider shot of that same area. This is the full gun. And this shows you that he could probably fit this likely in the backpack, but it would be, you know, you have to kind of put it at an angle, because that looks taller than the backpack, you know, quite a bit. But if you put it at an angle, you could probably stretch the backpack out, and then this would easily fit inside there. And then these are the improvised explosive devices inside his vehicle. So I wouldn't call them, I mean, they look crude, but maybe they're sophisticated in terms of how the mechanisms work, etc. But there it is right there, and it was set in the off position. It wasn't ready to go. And that's a little closer up. That image wasn't very clear on there, but they probably don't want it to be, so people can try to figure out what the hell, how to make them. I mean, that'd be ridiculous. And then there is that gun again. And they also provided this picture, which verifies, if you are willing to believe that their investigation led to this, that this is the area that Thomas Crooks climbed up on the roof. And we know that through other images and the investigation that that's right back here. He climbs up, then he goes this direction, and he must go onto this roof to get down onto this bridge area here, and then he makes his way, he throws his backpack up here, and then he makes his way this direction. And that's kind of where we're going to be heading next in this video. So we know that that one officer is coming out this direction, but let's listen to a former Secret Service person explain about the 3 minutes that there was communication, but then the Secret Service didn't have access to the same radio system.
The Secret Service has a mechanism and protocols in place that deals with communications issues that you would expect between agencies that don't carry the same frequency. I'm very troubled with that report that that's a huge misstatement or miscalculation there with not picking up those radios that would have allowed for key information, critical information, to be passed real time to the Secret Service from those other entities that were supporting the visit. To be able to then find the gentleman, or the young man, I should say, that got onto the roof and negate that problem.
Yeah, I hate when people say gentleman, like when there's a mass killer. Well, I don't know why the gentleman was there. What gentleman? Jesus. I mean, it's amazing how often people do that.
This is basic 101 protection that the Secret Service preaches in its methodologies, and it's very troubling if something was missed there on the very front end of that communication issue that then allowed all those other things to evolve and ultimately let that shot get off.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Now, what I did on this one is there's a vehicle that the officer who climbs up on the roof, he's actually got a vehicle camera also, and that's in the background. So this is a video, and then this right here is this officer's vehicle camera, and you'll see how it all works together. This camera in the bottom right is the officer who walks underneath the water tower, and in the distance you can see Crooks throw his backpack and start walking. So I believe that in this video, in the lower right, that's where you can see the officer reach up and radio in that he sees somebody on the roof, and it's almost exactly 3 minutes prior to the shooting. And there's no audio on this portion yet. But as you can look, all the times are synced up. The one in the lower right is the officer who, again, walks from the water tower all the way to the AGR building. But at some point he actually pulls his gun out. And that's after the officer in the upper left video goes up on the roof and then drops down really quick. He starts to climb up there and he drops down because he sees them have a gun, and then you hear him say something. Now, I've boosted up the audio and tried to clean it up a little bit. Why don't you guys in the comments section try to figure out exactly what you hear throughout that portion, because the vehicle actually picks up people talking around, and I think even the radio. So now we have the audio from inside the vehicle, and you can see it's synced up. The officer in the upper left doesn't have his mic on yet, so what we can do is listen to him using the vehicle camera. So right now it's 6:08 and 6 seconds, and look at the lower right there. If you look really closely, you can make out Crooks over there, and he stops. Look at that right there at 6:08.
On the roof.
And you hear that? Someone's on the roof? I think that's him saying it into the radio of the car in the upper left-hand corner. So let me go back there a little bit. It's pretty interesting. Watch. So this guy, see? he sees him jump on the roof, and he gets on his mic. See his arm up in the air there? And then that radio call goes into this officer's vehicle, but you can only hear it on this camera because that's his vehicle camera, his dash cam. Isn't that interesting? So all three of these are kind of connected like that.
Someone's on the roof.
Yeah, see that? That's crazy. It's not the car next to him who said that. It's actually on the radio. And this guy's still looking.
What's up, man? I have someone on the roof with white shorts.
Well, that time it did sound like he was saying it. So it's possible, I guess, that now that I look at that guy over there, because he said, hey, what's up, man? And then he said the same thing, and it sounded the same in the radio. You could see him actually hold the mic up to his mouth. That this guy was seeing the same thing. But this officer also, when you hear someone's on the roof, here we go.
Someone's on the roof.
All right, so that is 6:08 and 22 seconds. We know that the shooting happened at 6:11 and 32 seconds. So that's 3 minutes and 10 seconds before the shooting. They already knew that somebody was on the roof. What a ridiculous
Go
thing.
ahead, pause it right there.
They don't even...
All right, now 3 minutes, 10 seconds before the shooting, they knew somebody was on the roof. And that somebody on the roof is supposed to be Thomas Matthew Crooks. And he runs across the roof with a backpack that nobody sees him with, I guess, until after he's shot. We have yet to see footage where he's running around with the backpack where the gun sticks out. Now, I want to point out that this is a Trump rally, and 99% of people at the Trump rally own firearms. And they know what it looks like if you try to break down a rifle and stick it in a backpack, and they would be hip to that. So I don't think that guy was walking around with a backpack where he stuffed that broke down rifle in with a stock that adjusts, that doesn't make a difference in any of this. A stock that blew up, where does the butt of the stock go? It goes to your shoulder. And if they shot that part, like, I don't know, you would have catastrophic damage to his cranium, I would think, or some big bleed out shoulder injury from getting shot there. We have yet to see that type of evidence or footage. So I don't think that he's carrying around a rifle in that backpack conspicuously. He could have had it hidden someplace. You could say he left it behind the air conditioner and picked it up to get on the roof. Okay, I can go with that. But they haven't said that yet, and it's been like 7 weeks. Also, the pictures of the gun that you just saw, like, you could have seen that 6 weeks ago. Like, there's no reason it took so long to get this evidence to the public. The only thing it can do is create conspiracy theories, because people who are interested in putting together the puzzle are finding that there are pieces that are purposely missing because the government is censoring perspectives and evidence on the case. And that's not a good sign for people who want us, who want to make us believe that it's a one man, a 20-year-old guy who did this all alone without any help from the deep state's agenda that wants to see a civil war break out. And that would happen if they would have blown Trump's face off, not just his ear. So I'm hoping that Secret Service actually protects all the candidates. I don't want to see political violence on any of these sides. However, theft of people's property is a type of political violence. So one side might already be participating in that, and the other side has yet to respond. I don't know. That's why I don't play the red side, blue team, red team type of mentality, because that's a divide and conquer situation, and we need to rise above it by learning that there's an international deep state that has an invisible government that then precipitates down to what you see as Kamala and Trump in a White House situation, but they're not really changing too much on domestic or foreign policy because we're still under deep capture from that invisible government. And part of the invisibility is their tax exemption, so it's not on anyone's radar that these are the movers and shakers changing the attitudes, values, behaviors, and beliefs of Americans to be in line with collectivism. But we have much more to learn. What I'd like you to consider right now, before we get to the testimony of one of the SWAT officers, I'd like you to consider the situation. 3 minutes before Trump gets shot by Thomas Matthew Crooks, as the story goes, he's seen running around on the building by the police, and there's those pesky people off to the west side of the building saying, he's on the roof, officer, right? There's that whole thing going on. Under that duress, he is going to now allegedly take his disassembled rifle out of the backpack, and he's going to assemble it, and he's going to take shots at the president. Now, before I can have you consider that, I want you to consider some of the other evidence that you've seen. As a for instance, you saw his trunk, and those are allegedly homemade incendiary boom devices that he made. Did they seem like they were secured in the trunk at all? Like wouldn't you even have like a milk carton to keep them from rolling around in the trunk as you drive around? Do you think they could get switched on if they're rolling around and bumping into each other? I'm just saying that if you want me to believe that this guy did some internet searches and built that stuff on the first try without making a bigger scene, there's probably more to that story to be learned. The sanitation of his house, not ethnic cleansing, but the medical cleansing, the forensic cleansing of his home crime scene, that would have been conspicuous if he's mixing volatile chemicals together to make incendiary type of boom devices. So a lot of the facts that are coming out about the narrative make less sense than the original facts, which didn't make any sense because it was almost everything. If you go back in the time capsule that is Grand Theft World and you watch the week of Trump's assassination attempt, you'll notice that every news report that you heard in the first week has now been debunked for the most part. A whole lot of the various stories that were precipitated by mainstream media, including putting crooks in the wrong place for like a week or two on that roof, putting him at the other end and, giving them time to adjust to public narratives, because unlike the Kennedy assassination, it took a long time for them to kind of adapt to the narratives that the conspiracy theorists were coming up with. It took them a while before they came out with document 1035-960 countering criticism of the Warren Commission report. By the way, I'm going to do this live. I got a text from my buddy Kevin Larson, and he sent me this article earlier this week while I was traveling, and got a lot of text this week. The gist was the Associated Press had a hit piece, and they say, no, the phrase conspiracy theory was not invented by the CIA in the 1960s. And what they proceed to do is make a straw man of the situation. I do have the link. If I can copy it and send it to myself here in Discord, I will open it up and show you. Here it comes right there. I gotta hit send. Now I can click over here. All right, so check this out. I mean, this is real-time gaslighting from the people who killed Kennedy. All right, conspiracy theory coined long before JFK assassination. So what they say is it was made up in like the late 1800s, 1881, right? So yes, conspiracy theory is a phrase that has been used. Maybe this is the dispatch. It's been used for a long time. However, Associated Press. Oh, I wasn't showing you the thing. Oh man, come on, show the thing. Here we go. This is the article. It's an AP fact check. They're saying conspiracy theory coined long before JFK assassination. They create a straw man that does not represent the actual argument, because my argument would be as follows. The CIA document 1035-960 countering criticism of the Warren Commission report was the first time that conspiracy theory was taken from a neutral term and used as a pejorative, specifically aimed at anyone questioning the CIA's activities around the JFK assassination. Now, it is a fact of our world. I think might have even had a clip play tonight where it's known that the CIA played a role in the killing of Jack Kennedy. And MI6 played a role. Country C might have played a role. And the Mafia, the Chicago outfit, played a role. There's a reason that it's not declared open knowledge, and I explained that reason earlier tonight, but it goes back to the fact that it's a pejorative use of the phrase conspiracy theory that comes about in this document here concerning countering the criticism of the Warren Commission report. Now, this document in its totality is 53 pages, and it's written about a young author named Edward J. Epstein, no relation that I know of to Jeffrey Epstein. Edward J. Epstein is a New York Times best-selling author. He wrote a book in 1964-65 called Inquest. and it looks into the decision-making of the Warren Commission report. This memo in front of you is the CIA's response to so many people being interested in Edward J. Epstein's book, and they're like, what are we going to do about this guy? Now, Edward J. Epstein, before he wrote the book, was most recently John Taylor Gatto's roommate at Cornell. So they were together when Jack Kennedy was shot, and they said together, if the guy who shot him is dead by the end of the weekend, we know it's not a lone gunman. And then Oswald was done by Sunday. The whole thing's wrapped up by Monday. Kennedy got shot on Thursday. So very quickly, the official story got out there, and this memo captures a lot of that history. What they don't want you to do is actually read the memo. They're telling you, like, there's nothing to see here. It's been going on since the 1800s. Well, yeah, the United States, I believe, has had 4 American presidents assassinated, and there might be a British Empire thread. Here's the Epstein part right here. The theories of Mr. Epstein. Those 4 presidents of the United States that were assassinated definitely had British enemies, and somebody might want to look into those type of overarching executive actions. That's a great book, and it was made into a movie in the 70s. It's called Executive Action. It's probably the best film that portrays how the kill team from the CIA and the mob would kill Kennedy in a triangle of fire. And it's got Burt Lancaster, a bunch of famous people in the movie, but Executive Action is also a book, and then they made the movie. These are things that go on and permeate our culture to this day. I mean, one of the guys that just backed Trump, RFK Jr., his dad was killed by these people. His uncle was killed by these people. Look, JFK in Dallas, the Warren Commission and its critics. You can learn all about how truth, uncensored, is a threat to the people that make the lies, the people that are out there making the official narrative. You know, when people stop by my studio and they see 2 entire bookshelves of these blue volumes with silver letters or gold letters, all ornately detailed. There's like 30 volumes. And I explain, because they say, what is that? I said, that's how you explain to the world that it's a lone gunman. Those 31 books or the 30 volumes, they just say Oswald acted alone. And if he really acted alone, you really wouldn't need 30 volumes on that. I'm sure you're not going to see 30 volumes on Thomas Matthew Crooks, who also acted alone, but he wasn't as successful. So I'm sure they won't write too much more about him. Okay, so this sets us up. We have the next clip is a short clip, and then it's going to segue into a longer clip. But we have the assembly of the alleged weapon used by Thomas Matthew Crooks. So it's 3 minutes until Trump gets shot. He's on the roof. People are now seeing him, and he's under scrutiny. He has to take aim and do his thing, and he has to assemble his rifle, according to the official narrative. So I looked up. I wanted to see a video. He uses I think it's a DPMS Panther AR-15 chambered in NATO. So I went to YouTube. I typed in DPMS. Is that the correct? I don't even remember.
Yeah,
because they got bought by somebody else. They got bought. They have like a Florida name to it now. How to break down and reassemble the DPMS AR-15. I don't know if this one's chambered in 5.56, and I don't know the quality of the instructor who owns this gun. You're just going to see an average dude. An average dude has this gun. He's going to show you how to field strip it and reassemble it. You can watch the field stripping. Pay attention when he starts to reassemble all the different things that you would have to do correctly, and the tools he has to use on his own gun that I don't think that Crooks was pounding, breaking out a multi-tool to get his operation going. But I don't know. Maybe there's video of all this going on and him, astutely and accurately assembling the bolt carrier group and the charging handle and the other pieces that have to go together. And it's not just those 2 pins. There's some things that have to go together that would be, again, if you take his trunk and how he packed it and think of his backpack, this stuff's just floating around in that backpack, according to the official story, because if he was highly organized and that trunk was like all padded and packed, then I'd say he probably was organized on the roof. But when I see somebody's, disheveled car, I'm going to assume he has a disheveled backpack as well. So as we go into this, take a look. If you've never seen field stripping, it's an interesting art to practice. If you've seen, what was it, Full Metal Jacket, like they showed field stripping and, the accuracy and the timing of, they have to practice that a lot to get their time reduced down. I don't know if Crooks had those type of repetitions in. Maybe we'll find out some evidence that he was an astute person, and after he got made fun of in school, he pulled a private pile and got really serious about his field stripping and assembly. We have yet to see, but let's first let's check out the Panther DPMS, Panther Arms, AR-15 field stripping.
Hi everybody. Today we're going to be working with a DPMS Oracle AR-15. I'm new to the AR world, so this has been a learning experience for me. But today I'm going to show you how we break down the AR-15. First off, we want to make sure your magazine is out. We're going to pull the charge handle back and look down the chamber. Obviously, it's clear. We'll let that slide back. We're going to pull the trigger.
Hey, pause it for a second.
Dry fire it.
Just that part right there would make Bill Maher and Quentin Tarantino feel better, because they don't know how to make sure a weapon is cleared. That's one of the things they're really confused about in the Democrat, progressive, liberal, communist world. The real communists, they probably do know how to clear weapons, because they do kill people with those weapons. That's the history of the 20th century. Let's go back to the clip.
And we're ready to take it down. First off, I got this fancy tool. Just still getting familiar with it. And what we want to do is we want to knock out our rear pin. Mine could be a little bit tight at times. And then what we're going to do is knock out the front pin. Sometimes you don't have to take out the front pin if you're just going to be cleaning it, but for today's sake I'm going to break it down to show you. We'll punch out the front pin, pull them back. We'll pull them both through, and they stay connected. And we're going to drop down the lower receiver, and we're going to set that aside. Here's the lower receiver, and we're going to set that up to the side. We're going to pull back our charge handle, and then release the firing pin and stuff. And the charge handle will come out. And to take it down further, what we want to do is we're going to pull out the pin, or the cotter pin.
Pause it for a second. Now, this part is for your information. I'm not going to assert that Crooks had it broken down so far that he had to put his firing pin in, but I'm reasonably sure that the bolt carrier group and the charging handle are removed when you break it into two pieces like that, and he would have to accurately and precisely and quickly put those pieces back together, snap it back together, make sure his pins are set, then get up on his crappy optic that you've never even heard of. I mean, I don't even know how he zeroed this in. Anyway, it's just the incredulity, and I hope to take care of my incredulity through education. It has always worked for me in the past. When I don't believe the official story, a little bit of education sometimes dispels it and says, oh, I didn't know. And other times it says, these people are corrupt and crooked, and they lie to us for a living all the time while they're stealing our money. So maybe we should look at these things with a more critical eye than we have been traditionally. I think it might benefit us in our decision-making and our action taking. Let's go ahead. Now he's going to start the reassembly process now that he's kind of reached the full breakdown point of it.
As soon as I find the tool needed to do that, it has a little hook on it. What we do is we'll pull out the cottering pin. We get it hooked in there and just give it a slight tug. This one can be a little troublesome getting back in. And then we're going to drop out our firing pin. And that's what we have. And we're going to come down here to this area. We're going to give this a turn. And then we're going to pop it out. A little tough to get in there with your fingers. Set that aside. There, and there. And then there it is. So the AR-15 is broke down. For reassembly, we have this here. We're going to make sure this is going to go that way. And then we're going to drop our pin back into place. Hope you don't have large fingers, because it can be a bugger. And then we're going to give that a turn. And then we're going to replace the firing pin. I like to slide it through and catch it with my fingers. I just don't like dropping it through the hole. Don't know if it'll damage it, but I guess there's a good chance that it could. So we'll slide that down in, push that in, and then we're ready to drop the cottering pin back in. This is where I have a little bit of issue. Sometimes it can be a bugger, sometimes it goes right in. Today it went right in, which is great. So to slide this back together,
Okay, pause it now.
we want to put our
So at this point, this is likely if Crooks had his rifle broken down and put in the backpack, he's going to have the lower receiver, he's going to have the barrel, bolt carrier group already assembled with a firing pin and everything you just saw assembled, and the charging handle. So he's got 4 parts to put together. Now he's going to show you putting together these 4 parts. This is a realistic view of what the official story asks of you to believe that Crooks did this under pressure without professional training, apparently, unless the DHS at his shooting range showed him how to do this before he went there. But we have yet to see that. So let's go ahead and keep learning here together.
charge handle back in, and inside the upper there's a little slot. Might not be able to see it so well with and there's a little groove that it sets in, so we'll slide it in just a little bit, and then we'll drop this back in. We want to make sure this is pulled completely out, because if not, the little lock here will catch.
You see the problem with this?
So we just pull that back far enough, drop this in, and then it's ready to slide all the way through. You'll hear it click, and then that is that part. And then what we want to do is grab our lower receiver, bring it back over. What I like to do is put the front pin in first. Makes it a lot easier to get the rear pin in. And then we'll push that in. Mine's a little tight, so sometimes I gotta kind of push it in with a tool. I like to give it a slight little bump. Once you got that back together, you want to pull your charge handle back several times to make sure it functions correctly. And then we're going to dry fire it, and that is it. That's how we take down the DPMS Oracle AR-15.
Rich, can I just point out something for people that are
yes, please do, man.
Getting I can't think of a metaphor. So this video is 5 years old, right? So it has nothing to do with the event. This is a video just demonstrating how this weapon would be broken down. So nobody's saying that the kid was pulling out the bolt carrier group on the roof there necessarily. Just wanted to clarify that, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's not breaking it down to the fullest extent, but when you separate the rifle into 2 parts, lower receiver and the barrel, you have to do something with the charging handle and the bolt carrier group. Is it just floating around? How is it being assembled or disassembled on the spot? And would he be able to hear the click with people yelling, "He's on the roof, officer"? You know, there's a lot going on, and he's under scrutiny. So unless you're used to doing that blindfolded in a dark room with your ears covered and all sorts of distractions going on, I don't think that 20-year-old kid really had the moxie to be able to do what is claimed in that story. He could have had that rifle pre-assembled and laying on the roof the whole time. That's more believable. Tell me that story and I'll be like, okay, yeah. He could have had a secret compartment cut through the roof. That is more likely than him being the guy who can do that under pressure and still get the shots off without getting his head blown off first. But maybe if he's supposed to be there doing that, they give him all the time in the world. And maybe if they told him he's protecting the president and they need extra coverage on the roof, can he take that sector that the Secret Service forgot to cover? Maybe he's not under any pressure at all. And it's for him, he's like, oh, I'm getting to do my thing. You know, and then someone blows his head off. I don't know. I haven't seen all the footage yet, and they have been really hesitant to release the footage. So it's fascinating. It's interesting. It's still going on. It's relevant because there is a history of people taking off presidents' heads in this country with that type of Operation 40, Operation Mongoose type of behavior that has been going on for far too long. So let's go to the Heritage Foundation. They have one of the SWAT officers under testifying there. This is a SWAT counter sniper at Trump's Butler rally testifying on the shooting. This is recent in the past week. So let's check it out while it's fresh and see how it correlates and to the other evidence, and if it's congruent with what we know so far.
Mr. Ben Schaefer is currently an operator with Washington Regional SWAT, serving for nearly 7 years, and has served in critical military and law enforcement roles for over 20 years. Specifically, Schaefer has experience in canine handling with multiple deployments, developing training programs for the United States Marine Corps and other private security firms. Thank you, Mr. Schaefer, for being here.
Good morning. My name is Ben Schaefer. I'm a SWAT operator with Washington Regional SWAT team that was tasked for presidential support on that day. I just want to take a moment to thank everyone for the opportunity to be here today as you examine the assassination attempt on former President Donald J. Trump in Butler, PA. Before I begin, I feel compelled to also echo those condolences for all the victims that suffered that day and continue to suffer because of those tragedies. Since joining the Marine Corps in 2004, I've deployed, fought, and been recognized for exemplary service and performance in both Iraq and Afghanistan. I've provided security services to the President of the United States and other high-ranking members in the United States government. I've protected diplomatic persons, high net worth corporate clients, media personalities, investigative journalists, and the general public. I continue that work today as a SWAT team leader and executive protection specialist. I've been recognized on numerous occasions for my high level of professionalism, proficiency, and knowledge of all security measures while working in those fields. As I analyze what happened in hindsight and real time on July 13th, there's a few points that I'd like to talk or mention that haven't sat well with me or I haven't been able to reason. Part of that is in the communication conversation of what happened that day and the abilities or lack thereof. The ability to communicate quicker between agencies is definitely a shortfall. That was not optimized in what we'd normally see in a presidential support mission. This all led to an obvious delay in communication when we were beginning to target and respond to the threat that was Mr. Crooks that day. The lack of coordination between tactical element leaders and the Secret Service left ground elements in the dark and prevented necessary time to prepare for specific venue considerations and needs prior to that event. All Overwatch, sniper, counter-sniper positions should have had direct communication with each other that day at that entire rally. Some of the technical difficulties that have already been mentioned that I'd like to echo is the lack of drone coverage or drone overwatch that day, which left many danger areas exposed and severely, and I say that again, severely, impacted the ability to secure the venue and the event itself. Other points of failure, other danger areas that have been noted, and I feel the need again to echo those, is the water tower that was located in the northeast section of the event. That's a major, if not catastrophic failure to not identify that is a elevated, optimal, and opportunistic place for anyone with any kind of knowledge to wreak havoc on that event. The task that day, broken down, included local law enforcement's responsibilities that include traffic, parking, and access were their primary roles. State law enforcement handled crowd control, medical support to those in need. Due to the temperature that day, there were a lot of heat casualties, a lot of heat strokes, a lot of heat stress-induced issues. The local counter-assault teams were to neutralize and mitigate any threat to the former president. Local SWAT counter-sniper teams were to scan and hunt for anyone deemed a deadly threat to any member of the crowd or the former president. In conclusion to what I have to say today, there's no question that there were critical failures during the Butler event. It is important that we learn how and why this security failure occurred so that we can better provide safety and security to those high-ranking officials and the general public in the future. I truly believe Americans deserve that. Thank you for your opportunity to testify before you today. Happy to answer any questions that you may have.
So let's take a look at this from the local perspective. Ben, thank you for being here. Let's talk about the communications. Let's start there. Was there a central communications center in place?
Yes, there were. That was provided by the Butler Emergency Services Unit.
And typically, what was the Secret Service? Did they have a person on the scene, a decision maker on the scene in case an emergency happened?
I believe that there were a Secret Service agent responsible for the scene. However, they were not, to my knowledge, co-located at the command center itself.
So I want to make clear. So who was present in the communications command center that might have made decisions for Secret Service?
Secret Service, my understanding is that the information that was gathered by the command center, which would have been being operated by the Butler Emergency Services Unit and the commander in that capacity, he was responsible for relaying that information to a point of contact he had. And my understanding was that it was over a cell phone as opposed to in-person communications.
Is that normal to have a cell phone communication, or is there usually a body there that can make a decision?
In most security postures and events that I've been part of for these types of events, there is someone actually physically co-located for that reason. Due to the loss of cell phone service, which we experienced that day, a possible loss of radio communications that day. It's a very robust and fail-proof way to communicate because of the level of importance that's needed.
Let's put it this way. Were radios and communication implements offered to Secret Service by the local operators?
They were, yes.
And what was the form of the communication?
The form of communication would be some type of encrypted law enforcement style radio.
And do you know, did the Secret Service avail themselves of that? Did they obtain those radios?
I believe they were offered, but I do not believe they were taken.
So they did not utilize the preferred mechanisms of communications that was offered to them.
That's correct.
Let's talk timeline for a second. So if we look at this timeline, it indicates to us at 5:10 p.m. The shooter is identified as a suspicious person near the AGR building. Does that sound right to what you're understanding of the timeline?
Yes, sir.
And so at least some point, somebody had seen him by 5:10 p.m. That's an hour before the shooting. They adjudicated he was suspicious. And in testimony before the committees of Congress, they indicated to us that, when I say they, I'm talking Cheadle, Rowe, and Ray, the directors and interim directors of Secret Service and FBI. They indicated to us that there's a distinction between a suspicious person and a threat. And so you have a suspicious individual, you have a threat, there's an interim category as well. What's that interim category?
In our line of communications from a SWAT point of view and from a tactical point of view, our escalation of people that we encounter starts out as a suspicious person, then goes to a person of interest, and then from that level upgrades to what we refer to as a threat. And each one of those warrant a different response.
So the actual shooting takes place right about 6:11 p.m. So an hour elapses. How soon after the first identification of the shooter, which is at 5:10 p.m., did you? Before we get there, let's lay the foundation. What were you doing that day?
I was in a counter sniper role with one of my teammates in the southwest quadrant of the event center. Distance-wise, it was approximately 238 yards southwest of the podium and approximately 348 south-southwest of the shooter's final firing position.
And so he was not ever in your sector of responsibility?
Nor in my visual, nor sector, nor visual. I never had visual.
How soon after he's identified were you given information that, or did you hear information that there was a suspicious character that you should be alerted to?
I believe those text messages came across, and just to give some background on the text message tactics. So, in this type of event, as tactical officers, we try to build redundancy in communications because it's so critical. We start out in a primary role, which would have been our radios that day, communicating on a designated channel amongst all the tactical operators. Because we were in support of the host agency, which would have been the Butler, the Emergency Services Unit, we also were running a secondary channel that was our local Washington Regional SWAT team channel. On top of that, the snipers and counter snipers, or I should just say the counter snipers, there were no snipers involved in our chat, had set up another chat to be able to provide any type of pictures or any type of relevant media or anything like that we'd have been able to crosstalk.
So did you ever see any pictures? Were any pictures ever sent to you?
They were. The pictures came across the chat at approximately 5:38.
So about 30 minutes after the shooter, then at that time he was a suspicious individual.
That's correct.
And when he gets up on the roof and he's crawling across the roof, is that what threat assessment would normally be made of that guy at that point?
Sure. I think it's important to mention that, from the time the original pictures were taken, the comment of him possibly having a rangefinder or that he was confirmed to have a rangefinder at that point would have automatically escalated him in our protocols from a suspicious person into a person of interest. And that would have warranted some type of either investigatory detention or a stop and question at that point when the rangefinder became a factor.
Then, Mr. Shaver, at what point in that hour or before were you notified of the rangefinder, use of a rangefinder?
Within minutes of the original information being passed. So I would say shortly after 5:38 p.m. or 17:38.
In your opinion, Mr. Schaefer, why were counter snipers in AGR that had access to the entire building, from what we've been told, not able to see crooks crawling up the roof when we've seen several videos from the ground level taken by bystanders and individuals not even tasked to be doing security, were able to photograph crooks wearing no camouflage, crawling on a white roof? Why were the snipers, the local snipers, not able to see crooks and dispatch of him?
I can only pass this knowledge through secondhand communications. I was not privy to that location or to survey that ahead of time. Although I have spoken to those individuals that were placed in that room that day, based on the depth of the room, their placements, and the limited field of view that those windows provided. They were pretty narrow, as most standard residential windows are held. The angle was too hard for them to see that far to their east, which if they would have been facing south.
Mr. Schaefer, I just need you to kind of confirm the nose. And when I say confirm the nose, you'll understand. Didn't take the communication platform that was given by local forces, correct?
That's correct.
Didn't take the surveillance drone offered by local forces, is that correct?
That is correct.
Didn't show up for the morning briefing to ensure that last minute planning could be accounted for?
That is correct.
Didn't take any necessary measures to talk to the Kubota dealer, who was 400 yards away to the 12 o'clock direct line of sight, to even see whether or not they could gain access to that rooftop or talk to the owner?
That is correct.
Did not access the water tower, which has the highest vantage point, and provide oversight that would have also looked at the AGR building?
That is correct.
Mr. Schaefer, do you have any comment on that in terms of the engagement and the rules of engagement that were in place?
Yeah, absolutely. I can clarify that a little bit. So as a law enforcement sniper, we have a lot of responsibilities and inherited flexibility. One of those flexible procedures or statuses that we incur is known as compromised authority. Compromised authority in the law enforcement sense basically lays out the requirements for a deadly force response. And in that point in time, based on all the prerequisites that were identified and all the checks in the boxes that were made, Mr. Crooks would have met that level or that threshold.
When Mr. Schaefer, you were talking to us earlier about moving to texting. The counter snipers were texting. What does that do with your ability to stay on glass?
Well, as a secondary or possibly even a third method of communication as it was utilized that day, the sniper teams and the law enforcement concept sometimes are not a team. Sometimes we're deployed into situations where we're a single operator. So we're not only responsible for the surveillance aspect of the service we provide, but also having that deadly threat ability on board. So that can be very distracting. In that point in that day, that third level of communication would have pulled us away from our primary responsibilities to provide that deadly cover if needed.
Yeah, Mr. Schaefer, is there any dynamic you think I've missed in sort of summarizing this as, low agency performance generally layered with the other dynamics that the other witnesses have shared?
I don't believe so, Congressman. I think you've covered most of the relevant points, describing how that posture all relates and how this, began as maybe a single failure and multiplied into a much greater failure, just based on different levels. I'll say that, local law enforcement agencies that were involved that day, both tactical and non-tactical, were improvising, adapting, and overcoming to a lack of intelligence that was provided to them that day. In my historical background, in the Marine Corps, these types of events require planning, require reconnaissance, require intelligence in multiple stages. It requires rehearsals, things that were not seen in this event for this day. My knowledge is when I came onto the scene that morning, that I was fed multiple briefs and multiple maps of the area. I gathered information as much as I could the night before, which is about the same time as my commander had received the briefings for that day. So we really felt like we were on the back foot and just tried to overcome that throughout the day and gather what we could.
Great, thank you. My time's expired, but I think you've all provided us excellent areas for further inquiry.
Go ahead, pull that. I want to focus in on the point where he was talking about the AGR building, the counter sniper teams. He said a couple things that didn't ring true. And, what do I know? I'm just a guy with a podcast, but it seems like there were some things that didn't ring true that make me ask, why would they have two different stories on it? So we know that the counter sniper teams were at those windows, those Anderson casement windows, and they had optics covered with camouflage in those windows, meaning they were not in the back of the room. They were at the front of the room. They were in the windows, and that's where they're supposed to be spotting. The command center for those counter snipers is in the AGR building on the second floor closest. It's in the window closest to Crooks. So where's the command team? Even if these guys are away from their post, where's the command center team that has access to that window and Crooks running around with the backpack, putting a rifle together right in front of them? Also, these windows are open. There's people outside of these windows, people saying, "He's on the roof, officer, officer." If they were at their posts, they probably clearly could have heard that. But they weren't at their posts. Why weren't they at their posts? Where were they? Those stories are all convoluted. They're contradictory. So if Crooks acted alone and there's not a deep state hand in this, why don't all the rest of the facts make sense in a congruent way that don't contradict? And why is, the investigators not looking into it at an angle that, somebody with a cursory observation skill can write down in the note card? Because that's the quality of our Congress and the investigations these days, I guess. Why weren't those guys at their post? Why didn't they hear the people outside? Why did that guy just lie I mean, he was lied to. He was repeating something that's not true. I don't think he lied. He seems to be on the other side of the field. But the people who told him, oh, yeah, we were set up in the back of the room, it doesn't make sense. Only snipers would set up in the back of the room. If you're taking shots, you'd want to stay away from the window. If you're in an observation post, you want as wide a direction of angle as you could get. And the only way you could get that through thin windows is to get up real close and put your head in the front of the windows so you could see a wider area, because your job's supposed to be a counter sniper, spotter, assistant, or something. I don't know if they had guns in the window, but they appeared to have optics, maybe short barrel guns. I'm not sure, because they were camouflaged, and we don't have the declassified, uncamouflaged, unredacted pictures, photos, if you will, of those situations yet. I think part of it is the lying on the part of the deep state and its Renfields in our government. Part of the reason that they're successful in lying is because the audience is all too willing to believe things that are not true, because they've been schooled. They've been schooled into reacting similarly to a common stimulus instead of thinking it through and questioning it and saying, is that claim really true? Is there veracity? Is there evidence? Is there something to substantiate that claim in reality? Or are they bringing it in from the astral plane? Pulling it out of their astral plane is more like what they're doing. And they're asking, they're saying, please believe it. So, those things are going to keep going on.
Twice a year, I teach a course called Autonomy. It's a 12-week course. It teaches leadership, entrepreneur skills, executive skills, all these types of things that I saw were taken out of our education system in order to make the schooling or indoctrination system that we've all probably went through. And it has served us well enough to be interchangeable cogs in the machine of the globalists. But if we want a homestead, if we want write our own ticket, work from home job, work from anywhere type of situation, they're not exactly handing those out at the end of college. They give you a piece of paper and they're like, good luck. So reality is dropping us off here, but the demands of reality are up here. So I created Autonomy to help people close that gap for themselves so they can level up their skills to the demands of the situations that life is putting in front of us presently. Life's demands of intellect and understanding precision and complexity are ever increasing. The schooling didn't prepare us for it. The media is not going to do anything but reinforce what schooling prepared us for. And so we're going to have to take a leadership position and take steps off the beaten path to kind of blaze our own trail in life. What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and we can share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come on.